Hey guys, it's Chris here. Thought it'd be a good time for another video. Season just ended here in Georgia, and that means we've got about 9 months of maybe some 3D and some bow tuning for me. Hope everyone had a good season, first and foremost. And I wanted to do a video today about a drawboard and drawboard benefits. And I know you read a lot about drawboard and what all it can do, and a lot of people don't have one. And I want to just show how simple it is to build one and all the things that you can do to become a better tuner if you want to do some of these things on your own. This setup I have is a homemade setup. You can buy, there are some commercial setups you can buy, but I think I might have $40 in this entire setup. And I'll go through a couple of the pieces that I bought and what they do. But I just want to make a quick video and explain some of the things that I use a drawboard for and what you can do. That, it's hard to do when you just draw back and someone's looking at different things like your cam timing, your peep rotation. This thing allows you to do a lot of things, and so I'm going to kind of go one by one down some of those things and let you guys see why I use a drawboard and maybe why you could build one in the off season. So let's get started with that. I'm going to go through the components first. Hope you guys can see this. This is just a worm winch. I bought this at Harbor Freight. It was like $25. And you can just use a regular bow winch. If you use a bow winch, you're going to need to use a turnbuckle to make adjustments. I like this worm winch because you can crank it and let go, and it's not going to spin out. You can basically you can make adjustments here and let go, and it stays where you need it to stay. So that's why I like the worm winch. Next thing you're going to need is some type of J hook or I hook. This is not necessary, but it's a good thing to put into your system because it makes the draw cable higher than the D loop, which is important because when you draw the bow, you're drawing higher than the grip, and it just simulates the way that the cams are going to be in sync by the way you're drawing. Being that this is your hand position here, if you can put a J hook higher, it'll keep the bow in about the same position as when you're shooting. So that's an important piece that a lot of people skip, and when you skip that, the bow kind of does a lot of weird things when you're drawing it back, but that will eliminate that. Next thing you need is just some type of C-clip to attach to your D-loop. I do put a little piece of rope in here in case the D-loop were to break. There's just a little safety piece here that if that thing broke, it's not going to shoot, so that's a safety tip. And you need some type of metal tape. Again, that might have been $3 or $4. I think I got that at Harbor Freight as well. And that's to check draw length. And what you do is, from the deepest part of this grip on this pipe flange that I have here, you set the ruler at 1.75 inches because that's the AMO standard. Is the deepest part of the grip plus 1.75 is the draw length, the way the AMO measures it. So you set the tape at 1.75 from this corner here, and then you're able to check your draw length. So if you're shooting multiple bows and you feel like one is short, long, or longer than the other, you can put it on the drawboard and make adjustments that way and get it exactly where you want. Especially if you have some type of maybe a limb stop bow like some of these Obsessions that I have in here, you can set the draw length, exactly where you want it with a drawboard. So those are the pieces that you need. This pipe flange is just a screw-in pipe flange, and I've got a little piece of insulation over the top of that to protect the grip. And that's it. That's really all you need to make a drawboard, and of course something to mount it to. That's just a 2x6, but some people make them horizontal. I like mine vertical, like I draw and shoot the bow. It's a little easier for me to see and easier to work with. So those are the pieces of the drawboard. And let's go over some things that I checked, some important pieces that you can use for this drawboard. And to me, the most important is always going to be cam sync in the bow. And some people call it cam timing. It's really the cam sync, and what that is the cams draw in relation to each other. Cam timing, just so you know the difference, is basically this bow at brace is the starting position of the cam. Cam sync is the way they are at full draw in relation to each other. If one is ahead or behind the other, that's cam sync, and that's more important than, in my opinion, than the timing. It is important to get your timing right. If the cam is rotated one way or the other, that's something to consider, and you want to make sure it's right. But the biggest benefit of a drawboard is obviously the cam sync, especially on a hybrid bow like this Hoyt. There's little pegs here that you measure the sync, if which way they're in relation to each other. If one is ahead or behind the other, that can affect the knock travel. So to me, that is the absolute biggest benefit of a drawboard, and you have to have a drawboard really to tune a 2-track binary to set limb stops, because if you're going to set limb stops for let off or draw length on a binary, when you draw this thing back, you obviously have to get in here and you snug it up against the limb stop. So you have to have one of these to do it right. So setting the cam sync and your draw length on the drawboard, that is the #1 benefit. And it would stink to have to go to a shop to have someone do something that you can do that takes literally 2 minutes on a drawboard. And so, again, biggest benefit I can think of. Second thing is that you can do with the drawboard, I don't have to do it on this because I shoot a limb driver, but you can set your drop away timing, especially a QAD rest. If you're setting it and there's certain, if you shoot a QAD, you know, you want it to come up in the draw cycle at a specific point, you can do that as well. You just watch it during the draw cycle and you can make marks and it'll adjust itself. So you can set rest timing with a drawboard. Another thing that you can do, and I actually have an arrow in here for this reason, is you can look at your broadheads and make sure they're going to clear the riser. And I shoot a Ramcat 125 grain head, which is a big fixed head. And so you always want to make sure that it'll clear, and I check all mine to make sure they're going to do that. So you know, you can stick an arrow in there and you can look and make sure that your head is going to clear the riser as you draw it back, because this thing is exactly like it would be if you shoot it, and especially if you have all the same components. So that's another benefit there. You can actually look at your sight level and check the second axis, which is the most important axis on your sight, and that's the axis that makes sure all your pins are like this and it's not this way, which causes you to have left and right misses at long range. So I always just have a little, this is a level used for string to set up a rest, and this thing is very helpful. I don't know what this thing costs, but it wasn't expensive. And so you can basically set this on the bow and adjust it to make sure it's level, and you can look at your sight level. They make some tools that you can do this off of the bow, but in my opinion I like to do it at full draw, because this riser, and I can see it here, this riser has torque, and it's actually torqued to the right, and that affects the way the sight and the sight level. So if you do this at full draw, you can check your sight bubble, you can look and make sure that everything is lined up correctly. And that's another thing that's kind of overlooked, that you can do off of the bow without one of these, but it makes it a lot easier. Another thing you can check is you can look at the cam lean on a bow at full draw. And you do want the cams to be fairly straight at full draw. This one actually has a little bit of lean in the top. The bottom is about perfectly parallel, it's straight. And you can actually, during the draw cycle, you can watch the cams lean, which way they're moving around, and that'll teach you a lot about tuning, about which way the cams are going, if one's too much, if you have a left or right tear. So you can check the cam lean, and you do it just like you would if one was at braze. You can kind of stick an arrow on the side of the shaft here and kind of look at what it's doing in relation to the string. Again, this top cam has a little pre-lean in it as it sits, but I don't really worry about it if it's tuned in right, unless it was excessive. So that's another thing you can check. You can also check your peep rotation. If you have a peep that's not lining up, you can crank it back and watch it, and you can figure out which way you need to rotate your string. I have even changed peeps in the drawboard a lot, because there's not a lot of tension on this string at full draw. You can actually just pop a little separator in there and pop your peep in and out if you need to. If you need to change to a certain size. It's always best to use a press for that, but you can do it in a drawboard if you don't have a press, which is a lot of people don't have a press because they're expensive. So that's another plus. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's all the things that I think of. Oh, I was going to mention, because I get asked this a lot, and I was going to make a video on it, and that was about riser torque. And this has nothing to do with the drawboard, but you can see this when you're looking at a bow at full draw. If you line up this string and you line up the end of this arrow, these pins are now just about in perfect alignment. When the bow is at brace, they're not, and it's probably on a right-handed shooter, your pins are to the left of the arrow. People say, why is that? Why don't they line up straight? And it's because this riser torques during the draw cycle. And what happens is, if this is the bow at brace and it's straight, during the draw cycle on a right-handed bow, most of the time a bow is going to lean and rotate this way. And if you were to look down at your bow at full draw, you would see your arrow kind of points out in left field a little bit, and that's why your pins are to the left of your rest center shot at brace, but they're not at full draw. And that's actually pretty easy to see in the drawboard. If you were to get behind it and eyeball it, they're actually just about perfect alignment. So just kind of throw that in there, and maybe that clear up some questions about pin alignment and why they don't always line up with your center shot. So again, I encourage everyone. I'm gonna try to do a lot of videos in the off season because I enjoy doing it. But a drawboard is something that's easy to do. It's easy to build, and I think people would find a lot of enjoyment out of it to learning about how to tune and set up a bow. If you have any questions, just hit me up. As always, thanks.